I'm not a professional mechanic, yet I've never seen a video showing the details on how to change over a 3 Series tractor from mowing to snow blowing. I'm also not going to show how to remove a drive over deck. There's just so many good videos on that. So first part of prepping the tractor, I have to remove this front brush guard, and because when I raise it up, if you can see it, the top length of the snowblower mounts here and it hits the brush guard, so that's got to come off. Because this is a drive over deck, much more involved than just 2 lifting points on the rear of the on the hydraulic unit on the bottom of the tractor. So the trapeze for the drive over deck has to come off, and I'll lower it for you so you can see it. And this trapeze is held on It's held on by 2 18mm head bolts. They might be, well, they're 3/8 in diameter roughly, but they have 18mm heads on them. So there's a bolt on each side with spacers, and then this assembly has to come off, and the PTO drive. Now I didn't put these on real tight because obviously this pivots up and down. So I should be wearing safety glasses. I'll close my eyes. And I'll show you the spacer. That's the spacer. If you see it. So I like to leave, when I disassemble something that I'm going to have to reassemble, I like to put all the hardware back on it. I'm not going to show you the other side because it's redundant. So then the PTO shaft needs to come undone. And then you can see the lifting arms that stay on the tractor. These lifting arms stay on the tractor, and the back of the trapeze needs to come off of this. Now, on a regular mower deck, at least my old one, this component here lifted the tractor deck. So you just had this. You didn't have the rest of the trapeze mechanism, the drive shaft that has the automatic coupler to the deck in the drive over deck. So then these rings need to come off the lifting points of the tractor, and they're held on by these rings, locking rings at the end that you just rotate to get them on and off, because that's how you get them on. They're flared so that they get into the hole, and you just spin them and they lock on. I'll show you when I take this one off. So I gotta lift this up a little bit, relieve the pressure. Now I'll put the pin back on, and you can see that it's flared. You can see that, and you just stick that in the hole and rotate the ring. Pretty simple thing that works to hold it on. And again, I'm not going to show you the other side because it's redundant. I got to take this one off next. So now I'm going to raise those lifting arms, mid-mount lifting arms, which are unique to a tractor of 46 horsepower, and they're raised off of my third function on my loader. So let's start the tractor. So those will stay up all winter until I put my deck on this tractor, if I put it on this year. I'm looking at a 0-turn mower. So let's go to the front of the tractor. Next, I have to mount the bearing assembly, which supports the drive shaft going from the mid PTO the drive shaft comes through this area here. Let's go light on it. The drive shaft will come from the mid-mount PTO with a hex. It will go from round to hexagon shape to go through this area here, this front bearing assembly, and then we'll stick out with a spline to hook the snowblower up to. I have to mount with these bolt holes here. I mount them to these bolt holes between the frame of the tractor. Two on this side, then I have two bolts holes in this area that gets mounted. So I need a little more clearance in here, and what I typically do is loosen. So I'm going to try loosening two bolts on this side and one, two. Well, actually I'm going to try loosening the nuts on the inside and one bolt on the outside, if you can see it there. So I'm just going to loosen them a little bit. 19 millimeter. So let's see if we can get this in here. Sometimes things don't go quite as planned. Well, I have one bolt in. Okay. Man, sometimes things don't go as easy as you want them to do. That was definitely a lot of work to get in there, but it's done. So I'm going to re-tighten up the bolts that I've loosened. So next I have to take this hex end of the snowblower drive shaft, it's hexagonal, and feed it through the back side of this bearing assembly. And I just hate it. I don't even know if I can film it because you got to line up two flat spots on those bearings to feed it in. So try to put the flat side down and then feed it through to the, oh boy. Did I luck out? I think I got it through. Oh man, that is the easiest I've ever done it. Holy cow. Oh, wow. That's the easiest I've ever done it. Okay, so that's in. I'll show you what that looks like, but now I have to connect that to the PTO, mid-mount PTO. Wow. Okay. So that went okay. So now you can see it. That's my mid-mount PTO. The drive shaft just clears the lifting mechanism for the mid-mount deck. And sometimes when I'm snow blowing, you'll hear a whining noise. It's because this lifting mechanism will sag, loses some hydraulic pressure, and it will wear on the drive shaft. And this shaft goes all the way from the mid-mount all the way up to the front bearing assembly. I'll kind of bring you around to the front spline to mount the snowblower. Okay, so the next step is to mount the arms, which are shown here. This arm actually bolts in with a loose assembly. It's the bottom lifting arms to lift up the snowblower. And it gets, this is used for the mid-mount, or I'm sorry, the mid-mount mower, for the front mounting mechanism to lock into that. And it gets, this arm gets put on to the front lifting assembly on the tractor, which is operated by this is an additional option, this hydraulic piston that lifts these two arms up, and these extension arms that come out to the snowblower, it lifts them up. So this I think is designed very well by John Deere, because these are held in by blind pins. By blind I mean you lock them from only one side. There's only one side you have to pay attention to. There's nothing on this side. And it locks in with this ring pin to hold it in. And these just remove. I never remember how to get these in the spring. I should watch this video. And then this assembly, is a good way to lose your finger. Goes in like that and locks in with that pin. Now, you can see the arm comes out away from the tractor to lock into the snowblower. This is something I think John Deere gets a 10 for because it works very well. This side is usually harder, move the camera around, because sometimes you have to monkey around with the location of this hydraulic cylinder, raising it and lowering it. And you can see I don't like to put these rings in upside down. It looks like that's the only way I could do this side. So let's pull this out. And you can see that they're not clearing. Let's see if I can get it out. Let's redo this. No, another way. So if we get this out just past the locking mechanism, you see that's where the pin goes in. If we get this out just past that, we can lift this assembly off and it comes out, and then we can pull these pins out individually like that. Not an easy thing to do, but you're watching it, so you must want to see it. Got the second one in. Put the locking mechanism in. The bridging piece. I have to pull this pin out a little bit. Then I'm going to push them. I'm going to rock it. I hope you can see it. Move the light. I'm going to rock them. Rock the arm a little bit and slide them in. Look at that. And then we're going to put in the locking pin. See, I don't think I can get it in from this top. That's the cylinder. So we have to do it upside down. See, it's a loose assembly and cast iron, and it must be, it works. It doesn't break. I think they have that plate designed in it purposely so it's not so stiff that it breaks when you're snow blowing snow. And this is, I believe they use this mechanism, they call it the front mount 3-point hitch. I think this is the third point. I think they use this mechanism for, what do they use it for? Brooms. I don't think they use it for blades, although they may. They use it for front mount brooms. Last thing I have to do before I'm ready to hook up the snowblower is hook up the hydraulics to operate the cylinder. So you gotta love zip ties. I use them all the time, especially for tucking these snowblower hydraulics up out of the way during the summer. Now I'm gonna take a guess that they plug into here because these hoses are short. So and then this is the lifting mechanism. Okay, so those are plugged in. Let's start and see if it raises and lowers. That's it, raises and lowers, success. What I'm doing now is aligning the snowblower, which is awkward because it tips front to back, with the 3-point front mount hitch on the tractor and just inserting pins in. There's no mechanical ability to this other than inserting the pins and putting the locking rings on. Underneath the pallet is dollies, and that was really great. I could maneuver it around myself to get it hooked up. That's probably the easiest I've ever done it. Again, here are our lifting arms with 2 bolts top and bottom and a pin that goes between them. I might replace these pins with bolts. And here's the 3rd point. They call this a front mount 3-point head. 1, 2, 3. In this arm, you adjust for the angle of your cutting blade on the back of the deck, or on the back of the snowblower. Cutting blade here. Okay, I do have bearings set aside. I'm going to replace the bearings on the end. I don't know if I'm going to replace. Actually, this piece looks pretty good. I'm worried about snapping these bolts off by replacing this piece. If you saw the video where this bearing assembly pulled out on the right side. So the last thing I have to do is hook up the chute hydraulics. There's a keeper here, and I use zip ties to hold it there. They're predicting Buffalo is going to have the same amount of snow, if not a little more than they had last year, which last year was quite a more snow than I remember. So in a long time. Let's see if I got a left and right. So I have to bit some zip ties to hold that line down. I guess I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to zip tie this line. If you leave the lines out, the tires will hit it on sharp turns. So these 2 lines are going to get zip tied to these hydraulic hoses on this side. So I want to take up the slack. So these hoses, we're going to zip tie them in place here, held up there. My second set of zip ties is going on this mount, again to hold it in place so we don't get in trouble in the front. So these are captured here. They're nice and tight up against the body. Cut this one off with a bad set of side cutters. I'll cut this old one off. I'll cut this one down. Okay,